Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, and decorate. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Make and Decorate podcast with Stephanie. I'm Stephanie, your host, and this is Season 4, Episode 86. My guest today is Rhonda Pierce, a spokesperson for Schmetz Needles North America, and she is also the VP of Euronotions. We talk about sewing needles, specifically Schmetz needles, one of my personal favorites for machine sewing needles. And we also talk about some of the Grab-It sewing tools. Euronotions acquired the Grab-It company several years ago, and I have a lot of their nifty tools. The magnetic pin cushions and the bobbin savers. So that's going to be a lot of fun to chat about later on in the show. If you want to get straight to this guest segment, you can fast forward about 15 to 20 minutes and start from there. In the meantime, I will start the chit-chat segment. I wanted to thank all of you who joined my Mighty Networks group, Make and Decorate Friends. A lot more of you are joining, and I'm seeing some more pictures of quilts and things that you are working on or have finished. It's really nice to see those, and they're very inspirational to me, and I'm sure others in the group. So keep on posting your projects and join if you haven't joined. It's free. Mighty Networks. The link is always in the show notes. Or you can just go to Mighty Networks and look up Make and Decorate Friends. Another way to support the podcast is to become a patron and my Patreon page is at patreon.com/makeanddecorate. Or you can make a one-time donation on my podcast blog page. There's a button on the right-hand side of the screen, and you just click Donate the button, and it could be a one-time donation. And of course, the other way to support this podcast is simply by listening, and I appreciate everyone who listens. Thank you so much. In fact, I have a new review on Apple Podcasts this week. So let me see here. Yes, I'm going to read it for you. It's a little long, but you know what? I'm going to read it because this really kind of brought some tears to my eyes. The kindest things that this reviewer said. And she's titled it Unique Podcast for Makers. And the rest of it got cut off, the topic, but it's by Karen Kas. I love quilting. I love sewing. I love creativity, especially to do with fabrics. I love gardening and I love learning things. This podcast is unique because Stephanie does a lot of research to add value to her warm and cozy podcast. She is the reason I bought my new sewing machine and will probably be the reason why I will buy a new serger with air threading. Because besides, my old one is broken and can't be repaired, which is the best news ever. Fair warning, she tells us about the newest and the best tools out there. She tells us about the beauty of the flowers that she grows and what she is embroidering and knitting. She chats with us as if she were our best friend. I actually feel that way about her, even though I have never met her in person. I have asked her questions on Instagram through direct messaging, and she always gets back to me. It is really, truly amazing to have her as a friend and as a resource. If you find value and beauty in more than one creative field, give her show a listen and make your own mind up. Enjoy. So that was a wonderful review, and thank you for taking the time to write this. And it was very thoughtful. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, the air threading. So if any of you are thinking of investing in a serger, make sure you get one that has whatever it's called. It's air threading, jet threading, extraordinaire, whatever they call it. It's where the thread gets pushed by a puff of air and it goes all the way through all of the hard to thread parts of the machine, and it's fully automated. It is the best thing to invest in with a serger. There's another review. I can't remember if I read it or not. It's really short, but it was left towards the end of January. And it says, I don't know if this is for grown-ups, but I'm a kid. I listen and it's amazing. I made a reading nook while I listened and love it. And there's 10 purple hearts after it. So thank you very much. And I do think that kids could learn from this podcast if they like to learn things and make things, because this podcast is for makers. I also have a voicemail from Paula Barnett. So I will play that audio voicemail now, and it is a question, and then I will answer her question.
My name is Paula, and I really enjoy listening to your podcast. I have a question I think you could help me with. My fabric choices for my quilting are always very bold and bright colors and patterns, and my quilts are happy and colorful. The decor in my home is much more sedate with neutrals and texture, really no pattern fabrics at all. I would love to make some things that we could use in our home. Some bed quilts, pillows, wall hangings, throws for the couch, things like that. How do I reconcile the two so that my home stays serene and calm, but I'm able to enjoy some of my quilted items?
All right, so this is a great question, and a lot of times our personal home decor style is different than our quilting and making styles. So how do you kind of blend the two together to where it will still give you the best of both worlds, basically? There's a few ways that you can do this, and I'll just go through some of those because there is not one specific way. You can do, and this goes for everything. So even learning sewing, there's not only one way, to thread a needle, I guess. So one is saturated pops of limited and muted colors in your accents, whether you sew them or if they're decorative, like vases. These accent colors become your secondary and tertiary colors in your design palette. So basically, it just means that they are just accent colors. They're not the main saturated color of your palette, which in this case sounds like it is neutral, very soft, calming neutrals. It may be different shades of whites, soft whites and beiges. I'm not sure. She didn't specify what color the neutrals were, because there's a lot of different kind of neutrals as well. But pillows and vases and trays, decorative trays, coffee table books, those sort of things, that's where you can add interest, and you can just put little pops of color through those types of things without getting crazy and without feeling like you are not in your serene environment that you created for yourself. So if your bright colors, because she said that she loves bright colors in her quilting. So I don't know what they are, but I just want to give an example. So if they are blue, let's say they're blue, red, and white. Choose quilting fabrics in maybe a slightly softer tone of these same colors. Basically, what I call it is, if the color wheel is a dial, you're going to turn that dial in between those main colors, and they get softer, but they're still kind of in that same color family. For instance, blues. You can move from a bright blue to, let's say, maybe more of a softer cornflower blue. Instead of a bright red, then you can do more like a raspberry red, and a soft white, not like a pure white, but a soft ecru, ivory, champagne, that color of a white with your quilting items that you make to go into your serene, neutral interior decor. So French General has beautiful muted reds. They're really very nice. You could take a look at that. You can mix one color with some of the neutral colors. And mattress ticking stripes are really good to use as well. They really give a very soft pattern. It's very subtle, but there's still a little bit of color in that. And believe it or not, mixing things like that into your neutral decor will really give it depth and a bit of color, just enough so that you can keep your serene environment. You can also choose a large pattern statement fabric in neutrals and add a flange to, let's say, a pillow in color. So you're really adding your color in small but impactful areas of the items that you want to sew for your home decor. And there are some quilting fabrics that have some neutral tone-on-tone large statement patterns. So take a look at those. Well, even K Facette, he has I don't know the name of the collection, but they're kind of like soft grays, but they're the big patterns that you're used to seeing, but they're not in any of the bright colors. They're just in soft, muted. He's got some pastels and he has black and whites, so that sort of thing. So you can find those types of fabrics in quilting collections. And also, I always think too that if you're going to put a quilt in a room, don't match it to your home decor. It doesn't necessarily have to. You can. I mean, that's, another thing that you can do. But I also like to see a quilt where it's just colorful and it's a little bit of color. And let's say it is draped over the, like a corner of the sofa. And then you've got a pillow set, right on top of that. So it's a layering process. So you're layering that colorful quilt and on the sofa, which is another color and texture, and then a pillow right on top of the quilt that's laying on the corner of the sofa. That is another layer. So layering is how you do it, really. That's kind of like the bottom line is just think about the layers. For pillows, you can do, like I said, a contrast flange in color or a quarter piping, and you can do the front side of the pillow in a different fabric as the back side. So maybe, you know how that one phrase goes, all business in the front and party in the back. Do that with your pillows. And then however you're feeling, turn it around. and that will get you some flexibility in how you're feeling and if you want to dial up the colors in the room. Let's talk about the quilt for her bed that she asked about. So a quilt for your bed in a neutral design color palette. I would say if you're using this quilt as a functional quilt pulled all the way up on the bed where you see the entire quilt, then you would probably want to use a good amount of your neutral colors and then take one or two colors from the quilting side of the colors that you like and incorporate them in that way in smaller amounts, and then you'll still keep it serene and it won't get too busy and bright and chaotic. So it won't, in other words, it won't fight with your design scheme. And also on the backing of the quilt, you could go one of two ways. You could go crazy with that side and put all of your bright and colorful colors on the backing, and or you can do your binding in a colorful quilt fabric. You could do those scrappy bindings with all of your nice favorite quilt colors. So there's a number of ways that you could do that. But here's an example too. This 1K facet fabric, it's called Button Mosaic, and in the white color scheme. I think, it comes as a backing. So this has exactly what I was talking about as far as turning that dial, and it has mostly a neutral, kind of a white overall color with a little bit of gray, but then there's two pops of color. One of them is that raspberry red I was talking about. So it's not a real strong, but it's turned a little bit on that color wheel dial, and it's a really pretty raspberry color. And then there are just a couple of the buttons on the pattern that have like this buttery, warm yellow, just very small amounts of it. And if you take a look at that fabric, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So when you look at that fabric, you're not hit in the face with, oh my gosh, so much color and chaos. I'm not. So, but you really can see the splash of color in there, and the pattern is still done in neutral, and it looks really interesting and incorporated into a neutral color scheme. That fabric can look fabulous, like really good. So that is one example. There's another one he does that I like too. It's called Millefiore in the lilac colorway. And it is the lilac that he uses in there has a lot of gray in it. So it really neutralizes the colors of that fabric. And they're more like, you would kind of look at it and say it's pastel, but they're really not even, they are, but again, when a touch of gray is added, it really calms it all down. And it really is a beautiful fabric. So you could take a look at that as well. And then you will add your color in the shams, the pillow shams, and maybe an accent pillow or two on the bed. Curtains and drapery is another way to pull in some of your color. And again, you can just pull in a little bit. So a couple examples are, if you make draperies, keep them neutral and textured will add some impact. Essex Linen has the wide width fabric on their general neutrals like white. Ivory is really pretty, and flax is my favorite. And you can add your color to decorative banding on the front edge of the drapery panels. You can also add some banding to the bottom edge, but only if you are going to see the bottom of the draperies. Otherwise, it's really not worth the time and effort to add that to it. But definitely you will see the inside, what we call the inside lead edge, but that's just a pair of draperies. It's right at the center where the two draperies meet, the edge on each side. You could make a really cool like a flying geese edge treatment. You could do like a let's say a 2.5 to 3 inch finished flying goose in a vertical, sewn together vertically to kind of make like this ribbon. And you can, don't forget to add the seam allowance, and then you can stitch it onto the drapery panel when you're making the drapery panel. How beautiful would that look? That would be so awesome. And you can either do those in your home decor colors or a blend where you mix some of those neutrals with some color that you love. Just a little pop of color, and maybe it's a softer version of that color as well. So that's a really fun thing to think about. If you make a quilt specifically for, kind of like your home decoration, uh, I I would say you could still keep them bright and colorful. And if you really want it to flow and blend with your decorating, um, keep mix a neutral background fabric. Again, I bring up the Essex linen. I should really get paid for saying Essex linen because I say it so many times in almost every episode. But Essex linen, the champagne color is really beautiful as well as the flax. Also, think about your decorative accents. You can frame a colorful quilt block centered in a linen mat board. So again, you are creating the overall surrounding color in a neutral, and then the center focal point of that frame is your quilt block. That would be absolutely beautiful as well. So I hope that this answers your question. And please remember to leave me a voicemail if you have a question. I will certainly play it and answer your questions on a podcast or comments. So keep them coming. It's really fun to get these. We are coming into May with cold and rainy weather. It's been cold and rainy for days and days now. And as much as I want to get outside and start warm month activities, I really still love a cozy thunderstorm weekend, which is what we had last weekend. And I just feel like it's a reprieve from the week. And sometimes we need to just slow down for a minute because it's going to get really active very quickly in the next couple of weeks. I know for a lot of people, we're getting into graduation season, wedding season. For my family, we're getting into the birthday season. From May and through July, it's like birthday after birthday after birthday after, oh my gosh, it goes on and on and on. So as soon as July comes and goes, well, now they added a niece and a nephew into August. So August was always my 1 month of reprieve. It's like, August, there is nothing I have to do as far as birthdays. But now there's 2 more birthdays there. Anyway, I digress. I finished another Lucky Juju Cat doll, and I finished 2. I started the last one. These are all gifts for my little nieces this year, birthday gifts. They're so cute, and I've said this many times, but they are really fun to make. Okay. And, I will tell you though, this last one that I made, I think is my favorite. So I changed the main fabric for the face and the hands and the feet to a really light, soft aqua in an Essex linen, aqua Essex linen, and a neutral cream and light taupe lace type of fabric. In fact, I think it's called crochet by Allison Glass, crochet fabric. Hey, and that's another neutral fabric that has a pattern in it that you can use in your neutral decorating color scheme. Those would make really beautiful pillows, by the way. All right, let's listen to my conversation with Rhonda Pierce, the spokesperson for Schmetz Needles. I will say that we recorded this in mid-January, and I was still very sick, and you can hear it in my voice. And I also have to say that Rhonda is an amazing and talented person, and I appreciate her so much and the time she took. And she really is the best because I told her, I'm like, I'm going to mute myself when I cough and you just keep going. And that's what she did. She just kept the ball rolling. You know, she's used to the presenting and so forth. So it probably was so easy for her to do. But I tell you, it was a it was a rough time. And I realized after recording that episode that I should probably reschedule the other recordings for a little bit later when I'm not coughing so much. But just to give you a background, that's when we recorded the podcast. All right, here we go. My guest today is Rhonda Pierce, and she is a spokesperson for Schmetz Needles North America, and she is also the vice president of Euro Notions. Welcome to my show, Rhonda.
Well, hi there, Stephanie. I'm delighted to be here today.
I'm really happy to have you.
Well, I'm here in the Chicago area, and I'm nice and toasty warm in my own sewing room. So,
Yep, we are in the same Chicago area. You're a little further west than me. I'm closer to the city, but it's still the same cold. And I'm in my home office too, so it's nice to be cozy in your own sewing space.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to tell the listeners that I met you a few months ago, like maybe back in September, I think, at my local quilt shop. So I want to give them a shout out to Thimbles. And it's a great quilt shop, and one of the co-owners has been on my show before, and so that's where I met you, and it was so nice. And
well, Thimbles in Lockport,
yeah.
And Jane do such a great job, and I love all their staff. So yeah, I would say I'm a frequent visitor. Oh, maybe a frequent shopper there.
Yes. I love them. They're great. And I love the shop too, because it's kind of like in this, older, like Main Streety type of a little town. And they've got all the old, like there's a library ladder thingy back there, and some woodwork and wood floors that creak. So I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the beautiful tin ceiling. So yeah, beautiful building.
Yeah. So you're going to talk to us today about Schmetz Needles. But before that, let's see. I just want to talk a little bit about what you do, and you can do the same thing. But you specialize in developing educational presentations and marketing for Schmetz Needles, which is great. I love it. I've seen some of your videos on YouTube, and they're very educational, and it helps a lot with figuring out the needle system. And then you also this must be under Euro Notions, the Grab-It sewing tools?
Right. So
okay.
Euro Notions is a family-owned company, and we import Schmetz home sewing machine needles. And then a few years ago, we bought the Grab-It sewing tool company.
Okay, got it. And we'll talk about that a little later too. You also curate your own blog at sewmorestitches.com. And sewing and quilting are your hobbies. And on your blog, you say it's, quote, my way of life, quote, which I love it. So we can all relate. All right, so let's talk about Schmetz Needles. What's your story with Schmetz? Because I think you've been with them for a while, right?
Yeah. So in 2006, I was hired by Euro Notions to come in and market some machine embroidery software. And it went really well. The product was actually bought by another company. So yay. So what was I going to do next? Well, Euro Notions always had imported Schmetz needles for the home sewing market. And when I was traveling for this other software, everyone would come up to me and say, oh, and you know about needles. You know about sewing machine needles. So I saw a real need for education on Schmetz home sewing machine needles. So keeping that in mind, I really had great opportunities. Schmetz many decades ago had a printed brochure called the ABC Pocket Guide, but it really needed to be updated for our North American marketplace. So I went in and removed a lot of the German English and made it more user friendly for our consumer base. So now I think it's 40 pages. How many pages? Yeah, it's actually from cover to cover, it's now 40 pages. And I consider the Schmetz ABC Pocket Guide to be the meat and potatoes, the foundation to all sewing machine needle education. So in 2012, I actually went over to Germany to visit the factory. And let me just tell you, that was thrilling to visit with the Schmetz people and to visit the Schmetz campus. It's changed a lot over the years, and but they were still doing production of needles in Germany, in Aachen County. And I went over with my boss, the owner of Euronotions. His name is Jerry Smith. And then with the CFO, Pete Jan. So the three of us went over. It was the month of June, so it was beautiful there. And what I didn't know, none of us knew, was that June is white asparagus season in Germany. So with every meal, we had white asparagus. So that was kind of an unexpected jewel. So anyway, I got to see the production of some of the specialty needles that were made in Germany and to talk to the people. And one of the missions I had as marketing director at that time was to make needle selection and needle education easier for our sewing public. So I asked, I gave a whole marketing and educational presentation, and I got really great comments from them. They said, "Keep up the good work. You're doing a great job." And then I asked for what our sewing public wants is color coding on our needles so that they can identify more easily the needle type and size. So the meeting went on, and we were wrapping things up, and I'm thinking to myself, I didn't go all this way to Germany to not get my question answered. Can we color code? Can you color code Schmetz needles? And they were quite clear on their answer, and they just said, no, we will not do that. Okay. From that, wow, that really ignited me. So at that time, I was going to 25 different events throughout the United States and Canada. So at all my in-person events, I would say, hey, how many of you would be interested in color-coded needles? And at that time, email was just becoming popular. And I said, well, send me an email. So every 2 to 3 weeks, I would batch all of these requests for color-coded needles. I would batch and send them off to Schmetz. So finally, in July of 2013, I got the email that I had hoped for that said, "Dear Mrs. Pierce, please stop the emails. You're getting your color-coded needles."
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it.
So that started distribution of the the two color-coded needles started in January of 2014. So that's my big coup with Schmetz needles.
Color coding is just, everybody can I think pick it up because there's something with our visual and colors rather than numbers gets jumbled up in our heads, but we see a color, we can identify, oh, that is,
Yes.
a size 90-14.
So I like to say that color is a universal language. It requires no words. So
yes.
You just need to be familiar with the chart and, the different colors for the types and also for the sizes. So a magnifier is no longer needed to read the size.
I know. That's crazy. I remember using Schmetz needles because they're sold in the big box stores. And the big wall of them. And when I first started sewing, I didn't even know like quality of needles or different types, but at least they always had though on the packages that this is like a ballpoint or whatever denim needle. And they've been my favorite needle. I've tried other needles, but they've been really great.
Yeah, there are other needle companies out there. And what I hear from consumers is, and I know you can buy other needle brands that are less expensive, but really you just can't beat the quality that goes into the Schmetz needle. So there's a lot of loyalty and trustworthiness that's built between Schmetz and our consumer market. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. And let's see. Well, we might as well just talk about the needle itself. And you do a really good job because you have this giant, like blown up model of a needle with the eye. There it is.
Yes.
That's
This is
it.
17-inch Schmetz Super Demo needle. When I was going to shows, my luggage was always inspected by TSA, but now I'm just traveling virtually with my needle. So it is a good educational tool so that people can see the different parts of the needle, because I think when the consumer or the user actually understands the parts and the function of each part of the needle, it really informs your needle decision, what needle type and size to use. So yes, not all needles are alike. They have different points, different tips, different scarves, different sizes, etc. So it's good to be aware of the parts and their functions.
One of the things that I think is a common challenge with sewists and people is the thread matching to the right needle size in the needle hole. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I'll tell you what needle do you use with what thread, or what thread do you use with what needle? And then you throw in fabric.
Yeah.
So really, your needle selection, I like to think of it as a dance. It's a dance between your needle, your thread, your fabric, your technique. Maybe you kind of push or pull your fabric as you sew. And then let's not forget that our sewing machines have personalities. So if you're working on, let's say you're working on the same identical project as your best sewing buddy, you've got the same fabric, the same thread, the same needle, but maybe you have a different sewing machine. Well, guess what? Machines like different kinds of needles. So you're the dance leader, and sometimes you have to make adjustments. Sometimes it's to the needle, sometimes it's to the thread. But I do have a general rule of thumb as to what needle size to use with your different thread weights, and I call it the 80-40 rule. So 40 weight thread is probably the most popular thread weight. Doesn't matter what the brand is, but the 40 weight thread is your everyday thread. We use it for sewing, for piecing, for quilting, etc. Lots of uses. With the 40 weight thread, I personally use a size 80 needle. Now, maybe for you, you might want to go down to a size 75, but I think that most everyone uses a size 80 needle with a size 40 weight thread. So if you use that as a benchmark, a 40 weight thread with an 80-12 needle, now if you're working with a heavier weight thread, now you know to go up a needle size, at least a needle size, to a size 90-14, or if it's an even heavier thread, you know to go up to a size 100/16. Again, if you're using a 40 weight thread with a size 80-12 as your benchmark, and now you're going to be working with a finer weight thread, well, guess what? Then just go down a couple needle sizes, maybe to a size 70-10. Or during the pandemic, what's really become popular are those really super fine micro threads. And with those fine threads, you need a fine needle. So maybe that's a 60/8 or a 65/9. So sometimes you just kind of have to experiment. But the 80/40 rule is a good foundation to keep in mind your needle size.
That's a great rule. And I think the 80 is probably my most popular size needle that I use. I tend really only to use like either like the 75, 80, or 90. And then unless it's like a huge, like you need the denim or whatever needle, the hundreds and the 116.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you use those larger needle sizes, if you're working on canvas or vinyl or
upholstery fabric,
heavier weight fabrics.
Yeah. The other question I had too is, you probably already answered in that you say that every machine is different, but the needles work universally in high shank and low shank machines. So it really doesn't make a difference. The bobbin still like hooks onto the thread close to the needle.
Right.
And it works the same way, right?
So Schmetz needles work with all the different sewing machine brands. Doesn't matter what your brand is, but this Schmetz home sewing machine needle works with all the different needle manufacturers. So yay for that. So yes, you're right. It doesn't matter if it's a low shank, high shank, or slant shank. The needle will work with your machine. So on the back side of your needle, above the eye, you might take a closer look at your little 2-inch piece of steel, because on the back side of your needle is a little indentation above the eye. And this is referred to as the scarf of the needle. And the scarf has a very important function. When the needle passes through your fabric and your throat plate, the bobbin hook has to come up and catch that top thread in order to create the stitch. So the bobbin hook needs passing room. That's what this little scarf is all carved out about. So the bobbin hook can catch that top thread.
Yeah, that's great. It's a nice visual, and to help understand how the bobbin hook and the needle and the thread all kind of work together. And I think that I didn't realize, I've seen, you see those pictures of the little thread stitches and then the little hook coming through, but I think it was when I saw you with the needle and talking about how close the hook comes towards that scarf that it like clicked of, that makes perfect sense. That makes sense on how that works now. I get it.
Yeah.
And then for people who have long arms and stuff and sergers, they might use different needles. So
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think one of the important things that people need to keep in mind is, yes, Schmetz works with all the different sewing machine brands. For our home sewing machines, 99% of all of our home sewing machines use one needle system. That's needle system 130-705H. What that means is 130/705 means that the needle has a flat shank for perfect positioning into our needle holder. The H translates from the German word that means scarf, this little indentation above the eye. So most of all of our home sewing machines require needle system 130-705H. So that's really great news. But long arm machines frequently use a different needle system. That's needle system ELX 705 or ELX 705CF. What that means is ELX 705 is still a flat shank needle, but unlike our home sewing machine needle, there's not just one groove, but ELX 705 has a second groove on the back side of the needle in order to create the stitch. Now, what I found is on some of the more modern, on some of the more modern sergers or overlock machines, how do you know what needle system to use? You can just open up the cover, and generally there's a little metal plate or a stamp or a sticky label, and it'll tell you what needle system to use, or, read your owner's manual. But in the real world, we know that some of these sergers and overlock machines can use a regular home sewing machine. So talk to your dealer, check out the owner's manual online. And if you try a regular home sewing machine needle, well, be gentle and hand crank the first couple stitches to see if it works. I know my machine absolutely says use ELX 705 CF, CF for chrome finish. But I also know that I can use a regular home sewing machine needle. So if I'm working on a knit project, and let's say I love to serge my raw edges, even on knit fabrics, I might use a jersey or a stretch needle. But if my stitching starts to look wonky, or I don't like the way it looks, then, I'll follow the directions. I'll go back to what the machine recommends, ELX 705. So keep that in mind. As far as long arm machines, long arm machines use a variety of different needle systems. Some can use our regular flat shank needle with the scarf, 13705H, but many of the long arms require a different needle system. And examples would be 206X13 or a 134R or 135X17. So there's basically 5 different needle systems that long arms use. But just to give you a little bit of trivia, Stephanie, there are over 7,000 different needle systems used in machines. Now, most of those are for industrial or commercial machines, but so I feel very fortunate that for our home sewing machines, we use the flat shank needle with the scarf needle system 13705H. And then long arm machines use basically 4 or 5 different systems, and sergers, the ELX 705. So, yeah.
I like that. It just like simplifies the whole process of, the needle thing. And I think that if you have your needle kind of like situated in the knowledge, then the thread and the fabric issues start to dissipate.
A little 2-inch piece of steel can really make the difference in your joy of sewing or your agitation of sewing. Such a simple, inexpensive little thing like the sewing machine needle really does make a difference.
Yeah, and there's been a few times I can remember where you go through the whole thing, like something's not working right with your stitching, and you go through the whole like rethread, bobbin check, this and that, and then it's still not. And all of a sudden I'm like, change the needle. And that's what it was.
Yeah. Well, you just went through the clues to changing the needle. Oh.
Yeah. So, so I want to talk about the 2 color bands on the Schmetz needles, and then talk about the finishes, because there's a couple of finishes that we could talk about. Yeah.
Okay, so Schmetz Needles now has either 1 or 2 bands of color on their needles, and the 2 color bands were instituted in 2014. So the top color band identifies your needle type. So for your viewers for your listeners that are curious as to what those colors are, they can go to schmetzneedles.com under resources, and they can download that chart for free. So on the chart, you'll see the needle, a picture of a needle with 2 bands of color. On the left-hand side of that needle, you'll see the column is labeled needle type. And many of the different needle types have a specific color assigned. On the right-hand side of that color chart, the column is labeled needle size, and each needle size is assigned a color. So now when you look at your actual color bands on the needle, that top color band identifies the needle type, and the lower color band identifies the needle size. So if my favorite go-to needle is a microtex needle. So when I look at the chart, and I have a little chart here, when you go to the chart and you look up microtex, you look down the list and you'll find, oh, microtex is purple. And for size 80, you look underneath the column and you find size 80 is orange. So microtex size 8012 has top color band of purple and a lower color band of orange. So one more example would be what kind of needle type and size would you have if you have 2 bands of orange? 2 bands of orange. Well, you find orange under needle type is a jersey needle. And again, orange also is size 8012. Now, the other thing I need to point out on the Schmetz color chart is that under needle type, the very first needle that's listed is universal. And there's no color assigned. In fact, the color block is actually X'd out. So universal needles will have only 1 band of color. So that's to identify your needle size. So if you have a universal size 8012, you have a single band of orange. Or if your needle has, if your universal needle has a single band of blue, well, that's a size 9014. So keep that in mind. Before 2014, there were a couple needle types that had just a single band of color to identify the needle type. So jeans, quilting, microtex, stretch, and jersey. But it's 2014 when the 2 color bands were instituted. So yeah, it makes a world of difference. It makes identifying your needles so much easier.
It sure does. Yeah, definitely. And the note about the universal. So once I discovered this microtex needle, it's my favorite too. And I was just using it all the time, except for on stretch fabrics, knits. But last year I heard someone on, I think it was the Threads podcast, but she mentioned that she likes using the universal needle when sewing things like a linen fabric because it's a little bit in between a ball point and the sharp, and it won't fray that fabric. It'll kind of push between the fibers, which I thought was really interesting. So then I ran out and got some universal because I love sewing with linen fabric. So.
Okay. Well, the universal needle has a slightly rounded point, and the universal needle, just as it suggests, really has universal uses. And the universal needle is the most popular needle types. It works with all your knits and all of your woven fabrics. Universal size 8012 is the most popular needle type and size. That's what our sales reports reflect. Universal size 9014, so that's a little bit bigger, is the second most popular needle type and size. So everyone who sews should have those 2 needles in their stash. So as you were mentioning linen, I thought, oh, let me just look. I've got my handy Schmetz ABC pocket guide. And let me just see what it says for linen, what needle to use for linen. And yes, it does say universal, anywhere from 7010 to a 9014.
Oh,
so
excellent.
This is the little Schmetz ABC pocket guide. When you go to your local sewing machine dealer or quilt or fabric stores, buy your Schmetz needles and ask if they've got that ABC pocket guide. Tell them that you listen to Stephanie's podcast and they might have it for free. Otherwise, you can download this for free. Go to schmetzneedles.com, again, under resources, and you can download it as a PDF. It's not as cute as this little 3x5 inch, but it is available for free. And the other thing I'll mention, about the ABC Pocket Guide is that it's the foundation to our free Schmetz app. So you can go to Google Play or to the iStore and just type in Schmetz, Schmetz, and it'll pop right up. Now, the app we've had probably for 5 or 6 years, and technology's been changing so much that our app is looking a little bit tired these days, but actually we'll be updating it this year. In fact, last week we just interviewed a developer, so that should be happening, hopefully, maybe at the time that this actually broadcasts. The great thing is that needles don't really change that much, so the information is still valid.
Yeah, and my quilt shop Thimbles gave me, it was at a class that I went to, so machine embroidery. And so part of our little packets were that little booklet, and I got the little, it looks like a travel tag.
Oh, the luggage tag.
Yeah, the luggage tag.
It is a luggage tag and the Schmetz color chart is printed on the tag. So you can put this on your sewing machine or you can hang it on your bulletin board.
Okay.
And when I was traveling, I used the luggage tag on my luggage.
Well, that's funny. So it is a luggage tag.
It truly is.
It's helpful though. I have it hanging on, I have like those wooden peg thread things. Yep. And I have it hanging on a peg like close to my sewing machine over there. So I can just reach for it and look to see what, I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's one other thing that I saw that was interesting is it's called MyPad, and it's developed for Schmetz Needles.
Yes. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the original Grab It product, and that's the Grab It magnetic pin cushion.
Yes, I have 2 of those.
What color are your Grab It?
Red.
Red, okay. Mm-hmm. Red was one of the original colors.
Yay!
I have a yellow one here. I call it my limoncello yellow because I love limoncello.
Oh, me too.
So I love the Grab It magnetic pin cushion so much, along with the Grab It bobbin saver, that little donut-shaped bobbin saver.
I've got 3 of those.
Oh, excellent.
One for each machine for their bobbins. I love it.
What color are they?
I have a red, purple, and blue.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Yes. Well, so magnetic pin cushion, the bobbin saver. So I went back to the office. I said, look, we got to buy the Grab It sewing tool company. So we did. And I think that was probably at least 6 years ago. Well, one of the products that they had, which didn't get a lot of coverage, but I thought, with our Schmetz Needles, it's a great partnership. And it's called the Grab It MyPad. And I'll just show you first mine right here in the with a little hang card. You're going to find this at your sewing machine dealer or independent quilt or fabric store. And what it is an extra thick piece of felt, and then with all the different types of sewing machine needles. So this is the original one. I've been working on my slightly used needles, keeping them organized. But let me just show you the updated version. So here's the updated version. And now it's been updated as of last year. And all of the Schmetz needles are included, and all of the needle sizes are included. So we have universal needles. Well, we know universal has only one band of color for the needle size. So we just left this white here. And then universal, we have size 60/8 all the way up to size 120. So now you can organize all your Schmetz needles easily in this little MyPad. So we've got jeans in blue, embroidery has the red color block, orange for jersey, etc. Also on the MyPad is a little flower head pin, and you might be thinking, well, what's that about? The flower head pin is helpful if you have some old Schmetz needles that do not have the color coding. Maybe you inherited some needles from grandma or an aunt or whomever, and those needles are probably still sewing worthy. But once you take them out of the package, you just don't always remember what they are. So now you can use the flower head pin to identify the needle currently that's in your machine. So the Grab It My Pad's a great needle organizer of your slightly used needles. So I've been, personally, I've been sewing recklessly the last few weeks, using up odds and ends of thread and my slightly used needles. So my stash is getting a little lean as far as slightly used needles, but a great way to organize.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And I when I have needles that I've taken out to, if I'm sewing a different type of fabric, but the needle's still good, it still has some hours left into it, I put it into like this little, the standing thread things, and there's that little round foam thing on there, and I stick it in there.
Okay, yeah.
And then, but it's much easier if you have that, because you're going to put it right where you can easily see, oh, this is a Microtech,
Right.
80, 12, what is it? 80, 12?
80, 12, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I just keep mine right here, leaning against my lap. It's all my lamp.
Yeah.
It's always accessible, and I can see. So I always try to use up my slightly used needles before I use a.
Yes. That's fantastic. I love it. Good little tool. Okay. And just one more question on the needles is, you have I think I heard you say that Schmetz is now making all of their needles standard with the chrome finish. Is that correct?
Yes. So Schmetz needles had a nickel finish and worked beautifully. In 2017, we introduced a high-performance needle called Schmetz Chrome. So chrome resists heat and wear. And the chrome needles became so popular that it was decided to transition all of the needles from nickel to the chrome finish. So that transition took place last year. So if you've bought Schmetz needles, let's say in the last 6 months, maybe even a little bit earlier than that from your local dealer, you're probably already sewing on chrome or with a chrome needle. Again, machines, the chrome was introduced because of its high performance characteristics, resisting heat and wear. And our machines are sewing faster than ever before. So it used to be that machines would sew, 500, 600 stitches per minute. And now how fast are they going? 1,200 stitches per minute, even more.
Yeah.
So so if you have an older machine and you're thinking, well, my machine doesn't really sew that fast, don't worry about it, because the chrome finish still works in your vintage or older machines. You most likely won't even be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, but I could see how that could be useful for like machine embroidery.
Yes.
Because the needle like really speeds along in those.
It gets hot.
Yeah.
Hot. And, the thread really takes a beating when it's going back and forth in the eye of the needle. And, yeah.
That's great. It was really interesting to hear that. We'll talk about one more thing before we conclude, and that is you curate your own personal blog, and it's called Sew More Stitches. So talk about some of your recent, I've seen some of your posts, and you have some recent finishes and projects.
Well, gosh, I think I've been blogging for 6 years or so. I started blogging because I meet the most amazing people when I I was meeting the most amazing people when I was traveling. I was going to 20, 30 events every year in the United States or into Canada. And I like to document who I meet and what they're making, and document their sewing stories. Plus, my husband at that time had health issues, and I would come back all excited about the people I would meet, and then I would show him pictures. And so I decided, let me just put that in a blog so he can see as I'm traveling along and all the wonderful people that I'm meeting. So that's why I started it, so that my husband could share my excitement. And then people just started reading it and watching. So that was a lot of fun. I only blog about 3 times a week. And gosh, I'm not traveling now. So I'm not meeting people in person generally, but I still am sewing. I document what I sew. If you're interested, I finished some great projects in 2020 and 2021. You can go to the blog and just search 2020 sewing, 2021 sewing. So my first pandemic project that I finished was a project that had been sitting around for 17 years. One year I had made 15 Christmas quilts for family and friends, and I kept all the scraps. And then I thought, well, I use Thangles. That's a certain product where you make easy triangles and uniformly. So I had over 1,000 1-inch half square triangles already stitched up in individual units and setting in a bowl. Well, 17 years later, I woke up during the pandemic and I said, today's the day. And so I finished that project in 3 days.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I finished a 22-year-old project in the pandemic. It wasn't sewing. It was a crochet Afghan.
Oh, my God.
That was a gift from my mother.
Yes. Okay. 22 years. But
yes.
Time to do it.
And you know what? I thought she would have forgotten about it because when I first, I gifted it to her unfinished. And said, I'll just finish it and bring it back to you in a week. It's 22 years later.
Oh, my gosh.
She opened it. The facial expression was like priceless. She was like,
wonderful.
I was like, you remember that? Oh, my gosh. And everybody was laughing at me. They were just making fun of me. But I can't tell you how good it felt to get that done and actually give it to her because I felt really bad. I never did that.
Well, you can cross that off your to-do.
Yeah.
That little burden is in your mind.
Right. Oh, but I love that you decided to document your travels and the people you meet and the projects, and then your husband can see it while you're traveling. That was really nice.
Yes, that's what it was all about. And then family and friends started reading it too. My husband actually died 2 years ago, so he's no longer viewing it, but that didn't stop me.
Yeah.
No, I was so fortunate to have 25 wonderful years with my husband. So no, I was very fortunate, but he was fortunate too.
Oh, of course. Wonderful. So yeah, listeners take a look at her blog, and I like visiting blogs because you get some good ideas, and even if you end up being in sort of like a rut, it can really like refresh your view on projects and get you excited to try something.
Yeah, I have to tell you that I consider myself to be fairly skillful in my sewing. I love intersections that match, points that are pointy. You know, I do take pride in workmanship. But in December, I had 12 consecutive days off from work. You know, it's use it or lose it, and I'm not losing it.
No.
So I considered myself cocooning. And I didn't worry about the food I was eating. If I overate, fine. I didn't care. I kind of slept in a little bit, and I just sewed. I sewed. In fact, I was sewing recklessly. I took a bunch of scraps from mostly garments that I had made, and I cut up strips, and I embellished my tired-looking bath towels. And I have to tell you, there was a lot of freedom and fun just sewing fast and not worrying if I skipped a stitch, just let it go. And so I think overall I did 8 different sets. And so it was fun. I got that out of my system, and now I'm ready to do more skillful sewing again.
I saw that post, and your towels look it elevates the look of them so much, you know? Yeah, and it's a quick sew project. I tell you, I think we all need those little quick sew and quick finishes, especially when you involve yourself in a really long term, whether it's like a quilt or even clothing can be a long-term project if there's a lot of hand stitching or embellishments involved. And you make clothing. I've seen a beautiful tunic on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
In October, I was in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, where Nancy Zeman Productions opened up a new sewing studio. So I went in to talk about Schmetz, and they had some classes and beautiful fabrics, and a lot of the Nancy Zeman fans were there, and former Nancy's Notions employees. It was a grand weekend. And so Deanna Springer, who's their VP, said, Rhonda, let me give you this pattern. And a tunic, it's a McCall's tunic with kind of a squishy neckline. She gave me the elastic cording. And I thought, oh, that's what I'm going to do. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it was a knit waffle weave fabric. It was kind of lightweight. So I actually used a Pellon product to fuse to the back of each piece, except for the sleeves. I didn't do the sleeves because I thought the fabric needed a little bit more stability. I'd had the fabric for quite some time, but it was time to sew it, and it turned out really super cute. So
yeah, it's really pretty.
I still need to get a picture of me wearing it. So maybe later in the week I'll get that picture. But it is documented on my blog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very nice. Do you have anything you want to promote or talk about as far as events?
Well, last year I'm excited because gosh, even though I wasn't traveling in person, I was traveling all over North America virtually. So last year I gave 97 Schmetz virtual classes for stores, guilds, a couple museums, retreats, etc. So if anyone's interested in a Schmetz virtual class, they need to get in touch with me. Stephanie will probably have my email somewhere along the way. Just send me an email and we'll get something scheduled. So this year I have 30 plus scheduled. So I'm off to a good start. Our website is schmetzneedles.com, and there's a lot of free educational materials there, especially if you click resources. You can download the ABC Pocket Guide. You can download the Schmetz color chart. Plus, there's a lot of information about points and tips. We're updating our website probably about the time that this podcast goes live. So it might look a little bit different than it does today when we're taping this. But yeah, when I talk about needles, I'm not just trying to sell you needles, but I really want people to understand the importance of that little 2-inch piece of steel. I consider it the hardest working 2-inch piece of steel in the machine. I mean, the needle is in contact with your thread and your fabric. It's working hard with your machine. You might kind of push or pull your fabric as you're sewing, and all of that is taxing on your needle. So I'm not trying to just sell you needles, but I want you to be aware of what the needle's about, and hopefully elevate your respect for that needle while giving you more confidence in your needle selection. So it's always a joy when I give my classes and I see those smiles, and I see that information clicks with them. And because I realize that needles aren't sexy, they're not romantic, and they're not glamorous, but hello, you can't use your sewing machine without a Schmetz needle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when people, or I speak from my own experience, like when you get that aha moment with the needle and that confidence, sewing just becomes that much more pleasurable and fun. And yeah, I love it.
Yeah, when I was giving in-person classes, I would talk about clues to change the needle, and then the guilty giggles was always revealing. I loved it. The other thing I'll just say, Stephanie, is that Schmetz Needles is on Facebook. And right now, on the first Wednesday of every month, I do give a Facebook Live. I answer lots of questions and I talk about projects, and people from all over the world show up and we have a grand time. It's about 30, maybe 45 minutes. So lots of information is communicated there. Also sign up for the Schmetz Needles newsletter. If you go to schmetzneedles.com, after 20 or 30 seconds, there's one of those irritating pop-ups that will say, hey, sign up for the newsletter. The reason why I want you to sign up for the newsletter, it does come out monthly, but every once in a while, I have a special just for our subscribers. And this past year, I had 3 specials, and the last special was out of this world, where we offered a 9.5-inch tin, a specialty tin, and on the lid were different Schmetz needle points and tips. And we thought we had enough inventory for 3 days, and we sold out in 45 minutes. So when that took place, I got in touch with the manufacturer and say, hey, help me out here. We need more. And the reply was, hello, there's supply and demand issues right now.
Right?
No, but they said, well, we have 500 units. We'll go ahead. We'll sell those to you. We'll print up the lids for you. And so we thought, okay, we'll sell those in 3 days. We sold them out in a day. So there are no more, but I'm hoping to do something more like that this year.
That's fantastic. Oh, yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. I'll definitely put that in the show notes. And if I got to check and make sure I'm on that newsletter, I must not be, because I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, people had to act fast. No, it was crazy. It was crazy fun. And so,
wow.
As I mentioned before, we have wonderful customers. My sewing public is delightful. And so I try to do fun things and thoughtful things for everybody.
Oh, that's fun. That's really fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on to my show. I'm really just honored and pleased that you came on and that I met you in person.
Well, that was serendipitous, wasn't it?
It was. It really was.
Yes, I hope that we can meet up again, maybe in warmer weather.
Yes, yes.
But you know what? Even though we have Arctic weather right now, it's great sewing weather.
It sure is. Oh my gosh, I love it. All right. Well, take care. And until I chat with you again, happy sewing.
Okay. I'm Stephanie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So Schmetz.
If you would like a bonus episode every month, become a patron and support the Make and Decorate podcast show at my Patreon page, Make and Decorate. For extended show notes with links and photos to what we've talked about, visit my podcast blog at makeanddecorate.com. And remember to take some time for yourself to be creative. Bye-bye.